Hello everyone and welcome to this third lecture on computer-aided translation. Today we are going to explore a topic that is central to modern translation practice, pre-editing and post-editing strategies in modern machine translation workflows. As you know, neural machine translation has become a dominant tool in our field. Whether we like it or not, it is now integrated into the daily work of translators, companies, and institutions. It allows massive quantities of text to be drafted quickly, it provides multilingual access instantly, and it supports communication across borders. However, speed is not the whole story. Behind every machine output, there must be a human who understands what the system can and cannot do. Machine translation does not eliminate the need for translators. Instead, it reshapes their role in the translation industry. Two practices in particular define the modern workflow: pre-editing, which happens before the text enters the machine translation system, and post-editing, which happens after the machine translation system generates output. Throughout this lecture, you will get a comprehensive understanding of these two practices. It will show you how they improve machine translation output and help you see where your role as a translator remains absolutely essential. Before we get into pre-editing and post-editing, we must clarify four key concepts that often appear in translation workflows. These are proofreading, editing, revision, and verification. Proofreading is the final surface-level check. It deals with spelling, punctuation, formatting, and mechanical correctness. It does not question meaning, it ensures polish. On the other hand, editing is a deeper intervention. Editing may include restructuring sentences, improving coherence, tightening vocabulary, or adjusting tone. In machine translation context, editing often refers to operations such as adding, deleting, replacing, or moving words within a sentence. Revision traditionally assumes that the draft translation was produced by a human, not a machine. Revision means comparing the translated text with the source text. A reviser checks accuracy, fidelity, and completeness. Verification involves ensuring that the final product meets the specification. This implies correct terminology, correct formatting, adherence to a style guide, compliance with client expectations. Understanding these distinctions will help you see where pre-editing and post-editing fit. They are not simple proofreading activities. They are not full translations either. They occupy a middle ground, but they require high-level linguistic judgment. Pre-editing means modifying the source text before feeding it into a machine translation system. The goal is simple: produce cleaner, clearer, and more explicit input so the machine can generate better output. In many ways, pre-editing is like preparing the soil before planting. If the soil is full of stones and thorns, nothing will grow properly. But if you clear the ground, the result improves across all languages. Professional translators and translation scholars distinguish two types of pre-editing. These are light pre-editing and full pre-editing. Light pre-editing involves small adjustments such as correcting confusing pronouns, fixing spelling, and breaking up overly long sentences. Full pre-editing, by contrast, involves substantial rewriting using controlled language techniques, which results in significant changes to the source text. In order to pre-edit or prepare a source text for machine translation, professional translators use several strategies. The first one is simplifying complex sentence structure. In this example, which reads, "The device, which was released last year and which many users found difficult to configure despite the updated manual, requires calibration every month," this sentence is heavy, deeply embedded, and syntactically dense. Machine translation systems struggle with such structures because they must disambiguate multiple clauses at once. If we split the sentence into 3 short, complete clauses, the machine translation engine produces far more reliable results. The pre-edited version reads, "The device was released last year. Many users found it difficult to configure. You must calibrate it every month." These short sentences offer clear structure, explicit meaning, and stable pronoun reference. They translate reliably into French, Arabic, or any other language. The second strategy is removing ambiguity. Let's look at this sentence. John spoke to Mark before he sent the file. John spoke to Mark before he sent the file. In this sentence, we cannot understand, we cannot know who sent the file. Was it John or Mark? Machine translation systems will guess randomly and consequently produce a false meaning. The pre-edited sentence reads, "John spoke to Mark before John sent the file." This sentence, this version, eliminates ambiguity and protects the machine from making assumptions. The third technique is avoiding confusing pronoun chains. In this example, which reads, "Sarah met Lena and told her that she needed her help." Sarah met Lena and told her that she needed her help. As both Sarah and Lena could be replaced by the pronoun she, it is confusing and could lead to false meaning when translated into French or Arabic. The pre-edited version, "Sarah met Lena," Sarah told Lena that Sarah needed help, although it seems repetitive, but repetition is far safer for machine translation than ambiguity. The fourth pre-editing strategy is unifying terminology in the source text or the input in order to get unified translations in the output. So, using consistent terminology, for this I chose the example of engine, motor, and power unit, which are terms that appear in technical documents and are used interchangeably. To avoid the machine translation system translating them differently, we should choose only one and use it throughout the input. So, in the pre-edited version, we must choose either engine, motor, or power unit. The fifth pre-editing strategy is eliminating culture-specific expressions. Let's see this sentence in English. Our new phone sold out in a hot minute during the Thanksgiving rush. If we submit this sentence directly to a machine translation system, it will fail translating it and will get a literal translation leading to nonsense. In French, we could say, "En une minute chaude," so this is nonsense in French, and in Arabic, "نفذ هاتفنا الجديد في دقيقة ساخنة خلال اندفاع أيدي الشكر." So in Arabic there is no such expression دقيقة ساخنة nor اندفاع أيدي الشكر. So the pre-edited version reads, "Our new phone sold out very quickly during the holiday sales period." So what did we do in this sentence? We made the idiomatic expressions, the culture-specific expressions, explicit, and the machine translation system translated the meaning, rendered the meaning correctly. So what this strategy consists of is replacing culture-specific expressions with neutral, globally interpretable language. The sixth pre-editing strategy is making sequencing explicit. This has to do with pronouns, references that are not clear in a sentence. We should replace them by an explicit noun in order to help the machine translation identify the reference. Let's see this example. After checking the cables, restart it. In this sentence, it is not clear what it refers to, and the machine translation system will fail translating it correctly. So, in order to avoid this, we should pre-edit the sentence as follows. After you check the cables, restart the device. Now that we've dealt with pre-editing strategies, we move to the other side of the workflow, which is post-editing, starting by its definition and then its types, error categories in neural machine translation before embarking on post-editing strategies. Post-editing could be defined as the process of evaluating and correcting machine translation so that it meets the required quality level. In the same way as pre-editing, post-editing could be light or full. Light post-editing aims for good enough quality. The goal is basic comprehensibility. Only the most serious errors are corrected. These are meaning mistakes, wrong terminology, and grammar issues that break comprehension. Light post-editing is used for low-risk or internal texts. These are texts that are used and produced within a company or an institution that are not highly complicated and that aim at facilitating communication only. Full post-editing, on the other hand, aims for human quality output. Everything is corrected. This includes style, grammar, cohesion, terminology, tone, and fluency. Full post-editing is used when quality and accuracy are essential. Well, despite the fact that neural machine translation generates better output than any other machine translation approach, it still suffers many failures, including, first, lexical choice errors. This happens when the machine translation system chooses the wrong word. In this example, he charged the customer for the repair. The word charged, the adjective charged, is polysemic, and sometimes the machine translation system give it a wrong correspondent in the target language. As we can read in the French translation, il a accusé le client, and in Arabic, اتهم الزبون instead of فرض رسوما على العميل, or il a facturé les réparations in French. The second type of errors in neural machine translation output is pronoun errors or referential chain errors. This happens when the machine translation system interprets wrongly who he or she refers to. In the English sentence, Sarah met Lena, she gave her the keys, the machine translation often randomly assigns pronouns and will give us wrong translation in French or Arabic, where gender markers amplify errors. In order to avoid that the system misinterprets the pronoun or know correctly what the pronoun he or she refers to, we need to pre-edit the sentence as follows. Sarah met Lena, Sarah gave Lena the keys. The third category of errors in neural machine translation output are tense and aspect errors. Tenses are usually difficult for machine translation systems to handle, and the systems often misinterpret tense continuity. Let's see this example in English. The English sentence is in the present perfect. I have lived here for 5 years. And the machine translation system rendered it into French as J'ai vécu ici depuis 5 ans. It means that it translated the present perfect by the passé composé in French. So this is not correct because J'ai vécu ici depuis 5 ans is an error as the machine translation system mishandled continuity of action between English and French. In English, I have lived here for 5 years uses the present perfect to indicate an action that began in the past and continues into the present. Machine translation incorrectly maps this to the French passé composé, assuming both forms function similarly because they share a similar structure. In French, however, The passé composé expresses a completed action which contradicts the idea of ongoing residence. To express duration that continuous up to now, French uses the present tense plus depuis, as in the correct translation below, Je vis ici depuis 5 ans. This contrast highlights a key cross-linguistic difference. English encodes continuity through aspect, while French encodes it through the present tense combined with temporal markers. The fourth category of errors that we can find in neural machine translation output are errors related to cultural references. For example, in this sentence in English, we have Black Friday. Our Black Friday deals are unbeatable. Literal translations of Black Friday into Arabic often lose meaning or require explicitation. Why? Literal translations of Black Friday into Arabic fail because the term carries cultural meanings tied to American shopping traditions that do not exist in the Arab context. Machine translation systems typically reproduce the phrase as it is, producing a foreign and culturally irrelevant expression that does not convey the intended promotional message. By using a neutral and functional equivalent such as عروضنا لفترة التخفيضات أواخر نوفمبر لا مثيل لها, the translation preserves the meaning major seasonal discounts. This is the meaning of Black Friday, without importing the culturally loaded reference. This creates a natural, context-appropriate Arabic message that communicates the purpose rather than the foreign cultural label. The fifth category of failures in neural machine translation systems and machine translation systems in general has to do with proper names. These are names of people, geographical names, trademarks, and names of entities, etc., which are usually mistranslated by machine translation systems from and into Arabic. This is because machine translation systems often mistranslate names when shifting between Latin and Arabic scripts. The systems often mistranslate proper names because they treat them like regular words instead of fixed labels that should not change across languages. This is why the name media, for example, becomes media in English and then media in Arabic. The machine translation system corrects the name into a more common word rather than keeping it as a place name. Such mistakes happen because machine translation focuses on surface similarity and frequency, not on meaning. One way to reduce these errors is pre-editing the source text, for example, by checking spelling, capitalizing names correctly, or even marking them clearly before running machine translation. These simple steps signal to the system that the word is a proper name, helping preserve the correct form and avoiding wrong substitutions. One of the most common types of errors that we encounter in machine translation output has to do with abbreviations and acronyms. Machine translation systems often mishandle abbreviations and acronyms because they cannot always determine what the shortened form stands for or which field it belongs to. As a result, machine translation may leave an abbreviation untranslated, choose the wrong expansion, or replace it with something unrelated. This is especially common with forms like PT, CT, ETA, which have multiple possible meanings across medicine, engineering, linguistics, travel, and time zones. To avoid these errors, translators should expand the abbreviation in the source text before feeding it into machine translation. For example, PT is expanded into physiotherapy, CT into computed tomography, and ETA into estimated time of arrival. By clarifying the intended meaning in advance, we help the machine translation system choose the correct equivalent and prevent misinterpretation, ensuring a more accurate and context-appropriate translation. The seventh category of errors found in machine translation output relates to word order and syntax, particularly when translating from Arabic or into Arabic from English and French. Machine translation systems often struggle with English Arabic and French Arabic word order because Arabic syntax is highly sensitive to the placement of the verb, subject, and adverbs. When machine translation translates a sentence like the technician quickly repaired the device, it tends to copy the English structure directly, producing awkward sentences such as التقني بسرعة قام بإصلاح الجهاز, where the verb and the auxiliary are unnaturally positioned. Arabic prefers a smoother verb-subject-object structure, so a more natural rendering would be أصلح التقني الجهاز بسرعة. These errors happen because machine translation follows surface patterns instead of applying Arabic sentence conventions. Translators can fix them by reorganizing verbs, subjects, and modifiers to match typical Arabic syntax, ensuring clarity and fluency rather than a literal word-for-word order. The last type of errors that we can find in neural machine translation output is what we call hallucinations. Hallucinations simply means that machine translation systems invent information that is not present in the source text. They often add extra nouns, roles, places, or actions that the user never mentioned. In the example, please restart the system, the machine translation system rendered it into French as follows: Veuillez demander au technicien de redémarrer le système. So it is clear from this example that the machine translation system invented a technician who does not exist in the original sentence. This type of error is one of the most dangerous behaviors of neural machine translation because it creates misleading or incorrect meaning while still sounding fluent and natural. The same problem appears in Arabic machine translation. A sentence like please restart the system or please restart your device may be mistranslated as يرجى التواصل مع الدعم التقني لإعادة تشغيل جهازك, where the system hallucinates technical support even though the original text does not mention it. Because hallucinations are unpredictable and often deceptive, they require careful human review to ensure the translation remains faithful to the source text. Now we move to the last section of this lecture, which focuses on the cognitive and professional dimensions of working with machine translation as outlined in this slide. At this stage, it is important for you to understand that machine translation is not only a technical tool, but also a system that reshapes the translator's mental workload, career pathways, and ethical responsibilities. Post-editing especially creates a paradox. Machine translation output often looks fluent on the surface, yet may contain hidden errors that require constant vigilance. This increases the translator's cognitive load because they must detect and correct mistakes embedded inside seemingly correct sentences, a task that many professionals find more demanding than translating from scratch. Pre-editing, by contrast, requires analytical thinking, anticipation of machine translation weaknesses, and strong cross-linguistic awareness, since the translator must prepare the source text in a way that guides the machine toward more accurate output. From a professional standpoint, the integration of machine translation is opening new job avenues such as machine translation, literacy consulting, post-editing specialization, controlled language writing, terminology and data management, and quality reviewing with machine translation-centered workflows. These roles require hybrid skills that combine linguistic knowledge with technological competence, which is why students trained in pre-editing and post-editing are increasingly in demand. Finally, the ethical dimension remains central. Translators must ensure transparency with clients, avoid using machine translation for sensitive or confidential content without proper safeguards, and maintain realistic expectations about machine translation quality. Even with advanced tools, the translator remains responsible for the final meaning, which makes professional judgment and ethical awareness essential components of modern translation practice. As we reach the final slide of this lecture, it's important to reflect on the two big questions we've raised here. When is pre or post editing actually worth doing? And how much quality loss is acceptable when working with machine translation? These questions matter because they help us decide whether machine translation will support our work or slow it down. In many real-world situations, pre- and post-editing are extremely valuable. For example, when we are dealing with high-volume content, repetitive technical documentation, standardized formats, or multilingual projects with tight deadlines and limited budgets, machine translation can dramatically speed up the workflow. In these contexts, the goal is efficiency, and machine translation becomes a practical tool that humans can refine rather than a replacement for translators. However, it's equally important to recognize the kinds of text where machine translation performs poorly and where pre- or post-editing often isn't worth the effort. Creative writing, persuasive advertising, culturally rich content, and legal texts are examples of content that require exact conceptual precision and that can be distorted by machine translation. In such cases, fixing the output might take longer and produce worse results than simply translating from scratch. As for the acceptable quality loss, ISO 18587 gives us a useful benchmark. A post-edited text must be accurate, comprehensible, and fit for purpose. Notice that the standard does not demand stylistic perfection. Instead, it focuses on whether the translation successfully achieves the intended communication goal. This shifts the responsibility back to us as translators. The real question isn't whether machine translation is flawless, but whether we, combining our expertise with machine translation, can deliver a translation that meets the functional needs of the situation. Our professional judgment, knowing when to rely on machine translation and when to set it aside, remains the deciding factor. To conclude this presentation, it could be said that pre-editing and post-editing together form the new core literacy of the modern translator. Pre-editing prepares the text for the machine, while post-editing prepares the machine's output for the reader. Two complementary skills that allow you to work confidently with machine translation rather than against it. Mastering these techniques will enable you to deliver high-quality, purpose-fit translations, even in workflows where machine translation is central. As future professionals, your ability to guide machine translation, correct it, and make informed decisions about when to use it and when to rely on human translation will be essential in an industry that is evolving faster than ever. The references you see on the final slide provide the theoretical backbone for everything we've discussed today. Do Carmo and Morkins, 2021, help you understand the nuances between editing, post-editing, and revision. Sanchez and Kenny, 2022, explain how to select and prepare text for machine translation in a global context, and ISO 18587 2017 gives you the international standard that defines what acceptable post-edited quality looks like. These works are not just academic sources, they are practical guides that will support your development as translators, navigating the rapidly changing landscape of translation technology. Thank you for watching this presentation. I hope the concepts of pre-editing, post-editing, and machine translation quality assessment are now clearer and more practical for you. Your continued interest in these evolving translation technologies is what will help you grow as future professionals in the field. Thank you once again for taking time to watch this presentation.